So there you go. It is September 29th. Welcome to Let's Talk Native on the LTN Radio Network. This program breaks all the rules for Native radio. No, no buffalo speeches, no mystic healing, no special Indian prayers. We tackle the real issues facing Native people to look back at our glorious and our grave history, and a tough look at where we're at now. And to look forward to our ongoing battles for sovereignty and autonomy. Let's Talk Native is produced in association with Iroquois Promotions on the LTN Radio Network, streaming live from the Cattaraugus territory of the Seneca Nation, and simulcast or rebroadcast on the Gwe, CKWE in Tandanega. You can find us streaming our audio at www.ltnradionet.com. And of course, we go Facebook Live here. We try to we actually have a camera. Most people aren't even aware of this, and I've mentioned it before, but I haven't mentioned it in a while. We actually bought some special equipment for our streaming that allows us to edit on the fly, try to produce a little bit higher quality streaming, video streaming for Facebook. And of course, out of that that streaming, we also capture the video. So we not only provide the video on Facebook in real time, live streaming, but afterwards, and then we take that video and we produce a show for our Let's Talk Native TV YouTube channel, and we post it back up on there. And of course, as many of you know, Jake and I have been working on some of these other videos, these shorter videos, message-driven videos, not just video copies of our show. Look, I am John Kane. I'm the show's host and producer. I do have Jake Proud in studio, who is our video engineer, I guess is the best way to describe him. Our studio engineer is Kelly McMillan. She's the one who's provided us or helped us put our equipment list together. Oftentimes I'm joined by Matt Hill, who he actually works for a living. So sometimes he's not able to join us here. So it puts me working the board, and I appreciate when Matt is here, but and miss him when he's not. But understand that that he's got to, even when he's not here. I don't know if you notice, if you follow the Facebook live stream, he's there, and he's one of the guys commenting and providing me. If I ask a question, sometimes just off the top of my head, and I asked who was the singer who took a knee who sang the anthem at the Detroit Lions game last week, and sure enough, Matt posted the name up. So I appreciate the assistance I get from Matt, even when he's not here in studio. We've got a lot today. I mean, there's so much stuff. Obviously, I could do another whole show on the taking a knee and the Colin Kaepernick stuff, and the reaction that the NFL has taken in terms of trying to own the circumstance, own the issue, and trying to make it into a unifying call, which kind of defeats the purpose of a protest, really. And maybe I'll touch on some of it a little bit, because the divisiveness. I mean, there's a kid here locally in a town south of here called Jamestown, high school student, who took a knee at a game. And I'll tell you, the level of vitriol that I saw. The news posted it, and when I look at the comments that came out, and talk about bad parenting and how disgraceful it was, it still gets back down to the same thing about people just not understanding. Look, I'm not saying these protests have nothing to do with the flag. It does, but it isn't about protesting the flag. And Colin Kaepernick said it very clearly the first time he was asked, after sitting down, not even kneeling, after sitting down in a couple of preseason games at the beginning of last year, when he was asked, he says, "Look, I'm not going to stand up and give my respect to a flag for a country that has this level of injustice going on." Talking about black men being killed by cops with no consequences to the cops, and so he was talking about the injustice to black people and other people of color, and that's what he said. He didn't say that he hates America. In fact, what he said is, what his indication was that what people assume that flag means, or the national anthem means, is simply not true. And I posted that in a meme. Like I said, I read it last week. I said, look, it isn't the land of the free, not as long as people are being oppressed. And it's not, liberty and justice for all, as long as there is not liberty and justice for all. So that was Colin Kaepernick's stance. So when I see a 16 or 17-year-old kid who is conscious and aware enough to say, no, I'm going to take a knee. And he wasn't being belligerent. He just, again, respectfully took a knee, and it amazes me that people lose their mind. The Charlottesville thing, and that's not the only Charlottesville, the only example of people white supremacists, flying Nazi symbols, Nazi flags, and Confederate flags right alongside that precious American flag that everybody's losing their mind over. Nobody lost their mind over that. I mean, somebody got killed, run over by white supremacists in Charlottesville. A woman. I mean, and some of the people, I mean, friends of mine, people that I've known for many, many years, who are losing their minds because they just think that it's so outrageous that somebody could be so disrespectful. I mean, I'm reading posts. I mean, Michael Harriot, who I'm a fan of, who writes for The Root, somebody wrote him a letter and basically tried to suggest that the outrage and her having to endure the sight of somebody kneeling at a football game was somehow her pain from that she could somehow equate that to the pain of somebody, a family member, somebody who was killed at the hands of police. She said, she actually made that, that comparison. To equate kneeling during the national anthem and then to suggest that means that they are disrespecting troops who have died. People have lost their lives in war. Look, the ravages of war have nothing to do with playing the national anthem at a football game. And that's the other thing. When I hear people just rail on and on, I don't watch football to be politicized. Then how come you're not upset by the national anthem being played? How come you're not upset by, all of this right-wing conversation that gets associated with it, including the comments from the president and military jets flying, doing flybys? If you're saying, look, I only go to football to remove myself from everything on the news, and yet you're entertained by a fighter jet flying over, that's got nothing to do with football. And like I said, this idea of parading out football players on a football field for the national anthem, pro football anyway, it's less than a decade old. I mean, I'm not saying they don't play the national anthem at football games. They do that. I mean, they do that with little kids and the whole bit. But the idea of parading them out of the locker room so they're on the field, that's something relatively new. I mean, yeah, they may do it at the Super Bowls or at playoffs, but on the regular weekly schedule, and for all the people who are upset, then why aren't you upset at the media? They're the ones who are televising all this stuff. I mean, is it really necessary that the media concentrate? I mean, if the NFL was so upset about this, they have control on what the media broadcasts. The NFL should say stop broadcasting the national anthem. Or we're going to do the national anthem prior to the TV coverage. But they're allowing all this stuff to happen, and and again, it's absurd on a bunch of different levels. But again, I'm not gonna. That's one of the issues, and it's still going to be interesting to see how this thing plays out over the course of weeks and that kind of stuff, and just in general. Now, on top of that, I don't know. Many of you on Facebook may have seen this thing, but somebody posted a picture of Michael Bennett in the locker room with a bunch of Seattle Seahawks burning an American flag. Jake, did you see this one? Yeah, it's photoshopped. It's actually a picture from a couple of years ago of Michael Bennett doing a victory, a post-game dance. He's got his shirt off and he's doing a dance and there's a bunch of people cheering him. Somebody photoshopped that thing, stuck a flag in his hand, and people are losing their freaking minds. I mean, it's like they can't even fathom the idea that if you lit up a flag in a locker room that the sprinklers would go off and this is the kind of thing that you can actually do. I mean, and some people are pointing it out, but again, the comments that just started spewing from people like F the NFL, F this player, F the the Seattle Seahawks, all, and far too few considering, even with all the news. I mean, there's been a lot of news this past week about Facebook being hacked for fake news and pictures just like this, but the Russians actually playing a big role in running a bunch of fake news stories and ads and that kind of stuff. Even when it's in the news, people don't have enough critical thinking within their minds to say, yeah, there's something wrong with this thing. Let me look at this picture a little. And the thing is, there is something called Snopes, which I haven't seen any Snopes and this is a website you can go to, and you can search any news item, and they'll tell you whether it's false. I mean, or not just a news item. I mean, not just a false, not fake news, but even if Trump made a comment, for instance, and you want to find, is that true? You can go to Snopes and search it, and then it'll give you the background information, and it'll tell you whether it's true or not. And I haven't seen anybody call out Snopes for being wrong. But you can use that. I mean, if you see something on Facebook or Twitter or on the news, and you at least want some resource, and it's not the only place to go, but there are ways to verify whether the stuff you're being fed. Before you have this knee-jerk reaction, I mean, it just makes sense. And look, I made some mistakes too. I mean, I sometimes will get my facts wrong, and when it's pointed out to me, I'll clear it up, and I'll give you an example. We did a video this past week, and if you didn't get a chance to see it, I hope that you will. It was my video where I was addressing Paul Deister's addiction problem, and essentially I was calling him addicted to Seneca gaming revenue, and it's a 8 or 9 minute video, I guess, and it explains a lot of the conflict between the Senecas and the state and Paul Deister the whole. It explains in very good detail, and that stuff is all factual. Yeah, I offer it with a little bit of commentary and opinion thrown in. You can clearly see my bias if I'm referring to Paul Deister, the mayor of Niagara Falls, as somebody with a gambling addiction, a gambling revenue addiction. Then clearly I'm not painting it as something very sympathetic, really. But anyway, so I posted that video. Now the text or the words for that video, the script, if you will, was actually something I wrote for a column. But I didn't think the Buffalo News shot me down. They said, "Nah, we're not going to run another one of your columns. We ran you last 30 days ago, and we tried to put more space between somebody." So of course, originally they told me we won't run one within 30 days. So I waited 30 days, and that's the feedback that they gave me. So but I also sent it to the Niagara Falls Gazette, the Niagara Gazette. And I didn't hear back right away, and I just got the impression that it wasn't going to get run. So that's why I said, well, I don't need it run. I'll make a video. Then I get the call that the Niagara Gazette says that we are interested in running it, but it's a bit long. Can you trim it down? So I did. I ran I trimmed it down a couple of hundred words, and they posted it, even though it was longer than their traditional 800 word limit on a guest view. And so they ran it last Thursday. So it's interesting that this thing gets run right in Paul Deister's hometown. I'm sure he saw it, and it went pretty well. And I got into a bunch of conversations with people who had posted both the article and some of those people even posted the video. And I had made a claim in some of my back and forth. People were asking about how the Senecas came to be in Niagara Falls for this gaming stuff, and I mentioned the convention center losing $20 million a year. It was costing the city. And then somebody quickly pointed out that wasn't correct. And they were right. It wasn't correct. So I said, look, I got my numbers mixed up. It was costing the city of Niagara Falls around $3 million a year. It was losing $3 million a year to have the convention center operational. But it also had between $20 and $30 million worth of needed repairs. And I'm not talking about renovations and upgrades. I mean, just to patch the roof and make the HVAC system work. So, yeah, it was losing about $3 million a year, but it was in urgent need of patching the roof and a variety of other repairs that had a price tag between $20 and $30 million. So when somebody said it never cost the city $20 million a year, I said, yes, you're right. I got that wrong. So I'm not afraid to admit if I get some numbers wrong, but I tried to clear it up, and I wasn't trying to justify my mistake. It is what it is, and if somebody, that's the thing about doing this show and doing what I do. Look, I know that everybody isn't going to agree with me, especially on this whole flag thing. People just losing their minds, but I try to point out some of the stuff that they're missing. I mean, even those people say, "Look, I think it's great that these guys have a right to protest and everything else, but it was wrong to do it during the national anthem." And I'm thinking, no, I don't agree. I think that was an appropriate place to do it. And so and again, people have different opinions. But if you don't agree with me, I absolutely suggest that you challenge me. I mean, and I'm not saying challenge me to a duel or anything like that, or a fist fight. But I mean, but make your case and let's have that debate, because I think that debate oftentimes it may affect my view, and maybe I'll affect yours, or maybe just the spectators, people who see this thing. I heard what that person said about what John Kane said, and I agree with that person. Or they're going to say, John's got a good point there. I don't really, so even if you don't really like my delivery or whatever it is, my whole purpose for being here is to encourage a conversation. I mean, that's really what this is all about. We need to talk. We need to talk some of this stuff out. And people need to be informed. There's a lot of history that people simply don't know about. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that because there is an issue going on right now that, maybe you've heard it on the news and you're paying some attention to it, but I don't know if people can appreciate the history behind it. And that's Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is a Caribbean island. It is a U.S. territory that the United States essentially got from Spain during the Spanish-American War at the turn of the 20th century. So 1900, 1903, in that general area. So I know most people don't even know what the Spanish-American War is, but this was really when the United States had essentially accomplished much of its goal with the imperialism associated and the colonialism associated with North America and westward expansion and that kind of stuff. Their eyes turned beyond the continental boundaries and looked to other places, looked to the Caribbean, looked to the South Pacific and that kind of thing. Teddy Roosevelt was essentially it's funny because everything gets so mischaracterized, but he was a guy who was all about wanting to take over more lands. And in fact, he actually had, this is kind of crazy. People don't know this, but he actually had an obsession. He wanted to kill somebody. He wanted to, because he was never in war, but he felt like, man, if we can take over someplace, I might get a chance to shoot somebody. And allegedly, and I don't know if it's been fully confirmed, but allegedly he did fire shots at people. And I believe it was in Cuba, because during that whole Spanish-American War conflict, the conflict where the United States was trying to assert its global presence on some of these Spanish colonies, including Puerto Rico, Cuba. Now they had already, even prior to Roosevelt, they had already illegally occupied Hawaii and started asserting its presence in the South Pacific. But then they would go into Guam and the Philippines and the like. But so what happens with this is you have the United States going into essentially, there's no other way to describe it, but tropical paradises like Puerto Rico and like Hawaii. And so what does the United States accomplish in Puerto Rico? They've destroyed their economy through what most people call vulture capitalism, and it is a U.S. territory. I mean, and I'm not saying that it is an ill-gotten gain. I would argue, but it's a U.S. territory nonetheless. But most Americans are still troubled by their relationship with Puerto Rico and the people of Puerto Rico. I mean, we specifically, will reference somebody as a PR or a Puerto Rican, almost, and in fact, we'll even make the mistake. So many will make the mistake of calling them immigrants. When Sonia Sotomayor, who was already a sitting judge in the second district of New York, the appeals court, the Second Circuit appeals court, was put up for the Supreme Court. I heard NPR stories where when they were describing Sonia Sotomayor, they described her as the daughter of Puerto Rican immigrants. I mean, that's NPR. I mean, that's the media source that's supposed to be reliable, left-leaning media source that's supposed to get this stuff right. That isn't supposed to make these kinds of mistakes. Sonia Sotomayor's parents were not Puerto Rican immigrants. Why? Because Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory. The people who live in Puerto Rico are Americans. And if they come from Puerto Rico to the United States, they are not Puerto Rican immigrants any more than if somebody from California moves to New York. That is not, they are not immigrants. They are Americans. They are American citizens. People who live in Guam are American citizens. People who live in any of the territories that the United States claims. Although there are some weird things with the Isles of Samoa, which, they can actually be considered nationals or something like that. There's something weird there about how the people on the Isle of Samoa, if they get a passport, they aren't considered U.S. citizens. Don't ask me how that works, but it's something different. But clearly, Puerto Rico, which is not far from the United States, it's not as far from the United States as Hawaii. Those are American citizens. So when when a hurricane comes through, and the worst hurricane in 100 years comes through and literally flattens so much, it wipes out infrastructure, everything from water to power to electronic communications, all of that stuff. The slow reaction from Donald Trump as the president, and then his characterizations of his response is just absolutely deplorable. I mean, if you haven't come up with a reason to hate Donald Trump yet, then I just challenge you to look at his response to Puerto Rico. And he goes on to say, oh yeah, his people, even his Department of Homeland Security people say, oh yeah, our response to Puerto Rico is a really good news story. Ask the people in Puerto Rico, and they said, no, it isn't. We're dying here. This is a death story. This isn't a good news story. I mean, these are people who don't have drinking water. And again, consider the United States, which is the greatest military, right? The world's only superpower with all kinds of equipment, that can respond to an enemy threat, but they can't respond to something that was not just telegraphed. Everybody knew this was coming. They saw this hurricane coming for days, building up, and they knew it was going to hit Puerto Rico. So they had all the time. This isn't like an earthquake that comes out of the blue. And I'll tell you, the response of the United States and the Trump administration had to Puerto Rico compared to how they responded to the oil capital of the United States, Texas, or some of the wealthy elite, including Trump himself, of Florida. Oh yeah, they were very responsive to Texas and Florida, not so much to Puerto Rico. And one of the things that plagues places like Puerto Rico and Hawaii is a law called the Jones Act. Now, you might have heard about some of this stuff on the news, but I want to explain it a little bit. The Jones Act is a law that protects wealthy merchant companies, shipping merchant companies, and the whole thing was designed so trade couldn't happen in some place like Puerto Rico or Hawaii unless those ships flew flew flags and were registered as American merchants. Shipping merchants. So products can't come to Puerto Rico or Hawaii, essentially without, for all intents and purposes, without coming to the mainland, to the continent first. And that's why things are so expensive in Puerto Rico and so expensive in places like Hawaii. Now, stuff can go out. I mean, when Irma came through, the hurricane before Maria came through and hit much of these Caribbean islands, Puerto Rico provided all kinds of help to some of these other islands. But when Puerto Rico got nailed, those islands couldn't help back. Why? Because it was against federal law for ships to carry much needed supplies from these other Caribbean islands that have obviously they're colonial islands, they're French Virgin Islands, British Virgin Islands, Dutch Virgin Islands, whatever. They could not provide assistance to Puerto Rico. Why? Because of this Jones Act. Even John McCain, not a big fan of his. Obviously now that he seems to be staring death in the face. He seems to be making almost, very un-GOP-like decisions relating to dismantling Obamacare but he's one of the guys who said we need to get rid of the Jones Act. Folks in Puerto Rico and Hawaii have been saying this for a long time, but Donald Trump says, "Well, I'm a little concerned. I've got a lot of feedback from people in the shipping industry. Yeah, rich white people don't want you to undo their profitability, because this was about protecting the profits from rich shipping companies, white American shipping companies. But I think with a lot of pressure, Trump finally said, "Okay, I'm gonna waive the enforcement of the Jones Act, and probably only temporarily. It's not like he's really taking an interest in stripping the law altogether, but he's gonna waive it just so materials can get to Puerto Rico. Why? Because of his own incompetence." because he has failed to do so, because he is the president. And of course, this is the guy whose cabinet is like decimated, either because of never filling positions or because, frankly, it's watching people become a part of Trump's cabinet and then either get fired or eliminated is, I mean, it's just incredible. In case you didn't hear, Tom Price, who was the Secretary of Health and Human Services, just resigned. I think just today. He just resigned today. Mired in controversy because of him racking up huge bills by taking private jets as he travels. The woman who was in that position before him, I think it was Sebelius, she always flew just commercial airlines. No, not Tom Price. Why is he? Because he's a rich white guy. And he's also a rich white guy mired in controversy, even associated with the job that he has, because he was like an insider trader, worked with with a local congressman here, Chris Collins, who had scoped out a couple of medical supply companies that he and other friends close to him. He informed them, hey, you need to invest in this company. So they invest in this foreign medical supply company, and then they lobby to change laws that will that will be advantageous. I mean, talk about insider trading and conflicts of interest. But that's Tom Price and Chris Collins. But I guess we don't have to worry about Tom Price. He just quit. So he quit, got fired. Trump claims that he wasn't happy because why wasn't he happy? Because the media was finally calling out Price for all of this expensive travel. But I mean, so he lasted 252 days. Sebastian Gorka, he lasted 217 days. He was one of the communications guys. Steve Bannon, 210 days. Carl Icahn, 210 days. Then you had a couple of White House counsels, the Manufacturing Council. Yeah, that lasted 201 days before everybody, the mass exodus of people, major, business folks just said, nah, I don't want anything to do with this. So that lasted 201 days. The Economic Advisory Council to the White House only lasts 201 days. The Mooch, Scaramucci. This guy came in and only lasted 10 days. Reince Priebus, 189 days. Short, who was another communications guy, 182 days. Sean Spicy Spicer, he only lasted 109 days. Or no, he was 182 days too, I think. James Comey was fired after 109 days. Flynn, he was fired after 22 days, and Sally Yates, FBI, I think she was actually with the Justice Department. She got canned after 10 days. And this is like the craziness. This is the craziness associated with the incompetence of this administration. So yeah, when crisis hits, you bet somebody's going to pay a dear price, and that's what Puerto Rico is paying now. They are paying a dear price for the incompetence, and of course, yeah, there's a lot of incompetence associated with Donald Trump on this thing. But the other thing is, it's just a history that the United States has of absolutely wreaking havoc on these islands like Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and others. I mean, this is just the absolute travesty of American imperialism, American capitalism. And and again, as people, there have been. I don't know if anybody saw this the series that was on public television about Vietnam. And everybody's seeing, just the absolute tragedy that the Vietnam War was, which was not unlike the Korean War, and not really that much unlike going into Afghanistan and Iraq and some of these other places, but. You see this stuff and you realize that, especially with Korea and the Cold War and Vietnam, where communism was regarded as this big threat, this big red scare, and that these wars had to be fought on principle, not because there was a real enemy or a real threat, but just on the principle of not allowing communism to succeed. I mean, it's the same rhetoric that you hear out of Trump when he was at the UN calling down Venezuela for being a failed attempt at socialism. The fact that the United States has been, doing everything they can to make it fail is something that he isn't going to talk about. But if there's one thing that has been evidenced by Trump's rise to the presidency, is can we really not accept that the American experiment is not working out very well? So the imperialism, the capitalism, the claim for the unique democracy that is the United States, even though it's when you give that pledge to allegiance to the flag, I don't think people even understand the words. I mean, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. If you ask most Americans, is the United States a republic or a democracy? What do you think the answer is going to be? And it almost doesn't matter what the answer is, because if you ask them, well, what's the difference between a republic and a democracy? They can't even tell you. But this experiment in democracy, in a democratic republic, if that's what you want to call it, it's failing. When it puts a guy like Donald Trump in the office, losing the popular vote by millions of votes to somebody who was almost as unpopular as he was, it's a lesson in failure. Hey, it's about the hour, so we'll take a bit of a break. Well, how about we do a little bit of Logan stats? We'll go out. We'll be right back.
Simple song, simple man, and simple thrift store clothes and a simple thing. And he's gonna make it someday. He's gonna make it someday. That was a lifetime ago. A lifetime ago. Lifetime ago. A lifetime ago, a lifetime ago, lifetime ago. Ain't no thief gonna take my gold. Ain't no priest gonna save my soul. Ain't no thief gonna take my gold. Ain't no priest gonna save my soul. My soul. My poor soul. My soul. I'm a believer, and you know me, I couldn't leave her. And you know me, I'm a believer, and you know me, I couldn't leave her if I tried. If I tried, don't I've tried. Lord knows I've tried. Ain't no thief gonna take my gold. Ain't no priest gonna save my soul. Ain't no thief gonna take my gold. Ain't no priest gonna save my soul. My soul. My poor soul, my soul, my soul.
All right, thanks for coming back. Yeah, that's Logan Stats. That's Simple Man. It's one of my favorite songs, so I don't mind playing it. And if you listen to the show and you hear, there are certain performers that I play quite frequently. Murray Porter, who just a guy that I love for what he does. Guys like Logan Stats, a young guy. I like Steve Rushing-Wind as far as the flute player goes. My buddy Jimmy Wolf and of course John McLeod. I mean, these are guys that I'm going to play a lot of. Darkwater Rising, Charlie Lowry and company, Buffy St. Marie. These are all people that I'm going to play a lot of their stuff because I'm just a big fan. I make no apologies for playing some of the same music over and over again because when I come in the studio, I figure how often are people hearing this music? I figure if you're gonna hear it once or twice a week, and I don't play the exact same songs, but I just think that it's necessary that people hear this level of talent. Hey, I want to give thanks to my sponsors, Ross and Holly John and the RJE family of businesses, Eric White and ERW Enterprises, my good friends like Ed Schindler and Cynthia Trice, Neville Spring, Sugar Montour, and many others who have helped this program. And I say this each week, but I think it's important that people understand that we need support to do what we do here on a daily basis and on a weekly basis. We not only do this show twice a week, but I make the trip to New York, and obviously that costs money. But you know what? Even to get here, we were on commercial radio, 2 separate stations in Buffalo. We paid. We went from a 1-hour show to a 2-hour show. We were paying a pretty good penny to be on commercial radio, and I have no regrets about doing that. But we had to foot the bill, and that was tough. And so the idea that we had people from, especially this community, Cattaraugus, but not only here. I mean, I even got support from Akwesasne. I mean, other places in Cattaraugus and Allegheny, again, Tonawanda, Tuscarora. The idea of getting support that allowed me to be on commercial radio, and whether it was running ads or whether just donations or sponsorships, those people who stepped up at that time, even if they still aren't maintaining that level of financial support, the fact that they supported us then allow us to be here now. So I thank all of you for having done your part, and for stepping up, being a part of the fight. I mean, this program has been able to educate, entertain, and inform for over 7 years. We are in our 8th year, and so I'm very appreciative to that fact. I also want to thank Unity Stream and Apache Radio Net for providing our streaming, and thank CKWE both for the simulcast and the rebroadcast. I want to thank Netroots Radio, Real People's Media, Indigenous Resistance Radio, and I also want to thank all of you who share the videos, and not just the videos here from Facebook, but the YouTube videos. And I gotta say, this is something that we're providing more attention to. So I really do request, I ask of you, to not only subscribe. Yeah, I'd love for you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. There's 7,000 members on my Facebook group page. And man, if I had 7,000 subscribers to my YouTube channel, we'd be doing great. That might be ambitious, but I'd like to see several hundred. So if you check out this show, however you do it, Facebook, on your phones, through any of these rebroadcasts, I encourage you to check us out on YouTube, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's Let's Talk Native TV, and share those videos. And we are going to do more and more of those direct to you, my voice to you videos, not just packaging up these shows for our YouTube videos, but I do encourage you. I think there are a lot of messages that need to go out there, and there's any number of topics that we have yet to address. Obviously, I'm giving a fair amount of attention to what's happening with the fight that the Senecas are engaged in with Andrew Cuomo and some of the mayors of the municipalities here over revenue sharing, and I make no apologies for that. This is something that I've been passionate about since actually I'm probably one of the guys who read the Gaming Compact when so many others didn't. And I'm not. This isn't a jab at anybody who didn't read it, but I think to do the kinds of work that we do here, to take the interest in history and law that I do, you got to be a little bit of the nerdy type, and and I make no apologies for that either. I mean, you have to be willing to read some things that are just terrible reading, legal documents, contracts, and frankly, some of the books that I read. Some of them are great. Most of them are great, but they aren't always the easiest to read. And so, that's why I try to, filter some of this information down and then offer it in ways that I think it's a little bit more appealing, a little bit more accessible. And by all means, anybody who wants to learn more, I can direct them to publications. And like I said, this whole thing with the Seneca stuff, anybody can go to. If you go to a website called SenecaGamingTruth.com, right at the top of it, they've got a link to the text of the Gaming Compact. Not it's not exactly a children's story, but I encourage people to read it, read what's actually happening. They actually submitted, I think, some of the text from the governor's demand for arbitration and the Seneca Nation's response. So there's a lot of information there, and a little self-serving. They do post a couple of things that I've written. Buffalo News. I suspect that this piece that I did in the Niagara Gazette will show up on there, and they are featuring at least one of my videos on that on that page as well, or on that site. But there's a lot of good information, and there's a lot of ways that people can learn what is really happening, and they don't have to take my word for it. Like I said, I try to present information that will encourage people to learn more. And more importantly, or just as importantly, I try to provide information that will encourage the conversation from happening, or to continue. I mean, I'm hoping that at some point people say, I heard something, and I don't even care if they say they heard it on my show, but I heard something, and I'd like to talk about it. Whether it's over the dinner table, whether it's in a restaurant, whether whether it's among friends, or the workplace, whatever. I think some of these things need to take place. One of the things that I'm always just absolutely intrigued by is, and I can talk about this. Matt's not here to respond, but Matt takes a lot of this stuff on the road with him. So when he goes out and about, or he's working, he engages people. I remember even some of the folks he was engaging when I was in the midst of being a pretty relevant voice in the debate with Lancaster High School over their name. They were the Lancaster Redskins, and Matt worked with some of those folks from Lancaster. So some of those conversations that can start and at least provide the enough information so people feel like they can be armed. I mean, the most satisfying thing I hear anytime, whether it's on Facebook or emails or any kind of commentary, when somebody says, man, I listened to your show, and then I had a conversation with somebody about it, and I felt better equipped to talk about this stuff because I never heard anybody put this position to words the way you did. And I'm not saying somebody's got to use my exact words, but what I try to do is provide the confidence for taking on some of these conversations. Again, I'm not talking about driving somebody into a position, but I'm saying giving somebody the information that if they want to engage a conversation, you hear something that gets said and you want to respond, but you're afraid you don't have enough information to respond. I hope that you gain some of that information. So when that circumstance arises, I'm not saying you go attack anybody, but when you hear a conversation or somebody asks you a question because they know you're native and they say, yeah, you're Seneca. What's the deal with such and such? I am thrilled to death when I hear somebody say, I was asked that question and man, I was able to give an answer. So, and again, whether you get that answer because you heard it from me or I sparked enough interest that you did your own research and then gained that knowledge. I mean, that to me validates what we do here. So, I just want to throw that out there. A couple other things. Obviously, this Puerto Rican thing is something I go to New York each week to do my show. And, New York has the largest population of people who have ties to Puerto Rico. There are Puerto Ricans, Hispanics from Puerto Rico. And, even the folks where I stay, the hotel where I stay, I engage. I mean, it's the first time I actually had a conversation with somebody, on the street that's not involved in some of these political debates about the Jones Act. I mean, this is just, somebody who I see each week when I go to New York, and we had this, this deep conversation about this law that needs to be stripped off the books and how much it hurts where her family lives, where her, and this is her brother and close relatives that live in Puerto Rico that she hasn't heard from in over a week. So, I mean, I this whole thing with Puerto Rico is very much on my mind. So I want to put that out there. One of the other things that, and just to kind of go back a little bit on the football stuff, if there were 4 images that stuck with me after last weekend's football, and I talked about the one, and in fact that Matt, who wasn't in studio, was able to look up the name of the singer from Detroit who sang the national anthem, Rico Lavella, who took a knee before he finished the song, took the knee and threw his fist up. I mean, that image, and I posted the picture and a link to the video after Matt had found it for me. that to me was a powerful image. But then there's three other images. I don't get what the whole arm thing is. You know, these people linking with arms. I don't even know what that's supposed to be. I mean, is that supposed to be in solidarity with Colin Kaepernick taking a knee, but not quite taking a knee? I don't even know. I don't even know what that's supposed to symbolize, other than trying to show solidarity as a team, I guess. But I mean, showing solidarity is fine, but there should be a message behind that solidarity. What are they saying they're unified in? I don't get it. But there were three images that I saw. I saw the one with football players from the Washington team linked arms with Dan Snyder. And there's just something really, really strange about watching, this team with an owner, and both the players who are black, so should know something about oppression and racism, arm in arm with the owner who is Jewish, who you would think historically should know something about oppression, although there are people who have mixed feelings about that. But to see them standing arm in arm, allegedly standing up, taking a stand against racism, wearing the the uniforms of a team with a racial slur for a name. I mean, it's just, there's a level of absurdity, not just hypocrisy, but absurdity, that we can have a conversation related to the NFL and racism and still never have a conversation about the fact that the nation's capital has a multi-billion-dollar sports franchise with a racial slur for a name. So that image stuck out with me. There was an image of the Dallas Cowboys, all standing arm in arm with Jerry Jones before the national anthem played, and then rose to their feet when the national anthem played. That to me represented more along the lines of cowardice on the fact that the Dallas Cowboys is a team that is competitive. I'm not a big fan, but they're a team that's competitive. I think they're 2 wins and 1 loss or something like that. So they're 2-1, and those players don't have enough confidence or enough courage to take a knee because of the threats that Jerry Jones made about how he would punish his players if they did, which to me is very submissive. Then there's the fourth and final image, which is Ray Lewis with the Ravens, and this was in England, I think. They take a knee, and Ray Lewis is on 2 knees. And Ray Lewis is one of the guys who was so vocal, said, "I will never drop my knee. I will never do what Colin Kaepernick." Just went off and just really derided, everything that Colin Kaepernick was trying to fight for. Then he's on his knees. And so when he was called out, he goes, "Oh no, I wasn't taking a knee. I took 2 knees. I wasn't protesting. I was praying." And then gets into this whole, preacher mode and stuff like that. What a freaking hypocrite. I mean, in his interview, he talked about, he goes, I do too much with cops and too much with politicians and people in power. And you do too much with cops. Is that how you managed to get out of a murder charge? This is a guy who was in a limousine where 2 people were killed. And his clothes mysteriously disappear. And he wants to sit. So yeah, you don't have a problem with the whole Black Lives Matter thing, because apparently, you managed to skate this, work the system. You're the black man who didn't get oppressed, who didn't get persecuted, who didn't get shot. You weren't the unarmed black man shot by police. You were the guy who apparently had some kind of special deal going on. So again, I mentioned those four issues because those are 4 images that stuck in my mind. 3 of them that to me, at best, sent mixed messages, if not the wrong message, and one that to me was a powerful image. Again, my hats off to Rico Lavallo for what he did when he sang the national anthem. And he wasn't the only one. I think there was a woman who was singing at one of the NFL games also took a knee, either during her song or immediately after. So, again, look, people can have mixed feelings about even about how much respect taking a knee, plays to it. And I've heard people say, "I won't stand, I won't sit, and I won't take a knee to the American anthem." Okay, well, yeah. I guess whatever you do during a flag ceremony or a national anthem is irrelevant because you don't want to respond one or the other. But I still support these guys who are calling out the United States and the rhetoric associated with their national anthem, with their again, their pledge to the flag and all other stuff, not because the words are necessarily. I mean, I've got a lot of problems with some of the words from the national anthem, but it's fine to say the land of the free, and even the home of the brave, if you want to say that. But if the freedom isn't really there, then it isn't really there. And if liberty and justice for all doesn't exist, then I am absolutely in agreement with people who say, no, I'm not going to pledge that flag. And again, I think it's wrong that we continue to hoist up flags on native territories the way we do. I mean, there are more American flags flying on native territories. I mean, not just when Obama goes to Standing Rock, but here, even here in the Seneca Nation. And I get it. Some people say, no, we better not take that down because our customer base depends on Americans, the loyal patronage from American citizens and that kind of stuff. I get that. But on territory, I don't know. I mean, I didn't say we should do anything disrespectful to the flag other than take it down. But I advocated many times that taking the flag down out in front of the administration buildings and folding it up and putting it in one of those little special boxes and putting it on a shelf and telling the United States, until you respect our sovereignty, we don't feel it's appropriate for us to fly your flag as an ally. Because I think it's going to be clear that if you're flying the American flag alongside the Seneca flag or the Hiawatha Belt, that you're not flying it as being subjugated by them. And so that statement should be clear. So I want to put that out there. Hey, look, I know we're running out of time, so I want to talk about this tomorrow. Remember the removal. I think it's the 52nd anniversary of the forced removal from Allegheny Territory for the Kinzua Dam. And they're doing a special event tomorrow in Steenburg. It starts at the Steenburg Community Center at 9 a.m. That's when there's a registration. They're actually going to do a walk from the site of where some of these homes and the villages were burned and destroyed by the Army Corps of Engineers 52 years ago to remove people from this area that would be made into a flood zone so they could, so they built a dam, the Kinzua Dam, and created the Kinzua Reservoir, committed 10,000 acres of Seneca land into this flood zone so they could protect Pittsburgh from flooding. When, my buddy Mike had posted something about an expression he was just becoming aware of, which was environmental racism, and he asked for thoughts. And I said, well, environmental racism, it is the Kinzua Dam. Because when you can tell people you are irrelevant enough that we're going to regard 10,000 acres of your already limited land as a sacrifice zone so we can, create better flood control for Pittsburgh, that's environmental racism. Environmental racism is putting a pipeline closer to Standing Rock than to Bismarck, because the people of the Lakota people are their territories are more of a sacrifice zone than where white people live. Sacrifice zone or environmental racism is putting a nuclear storage facility 30 miles upstream of the Cattaraugus territory of the Seneca Nation, creating the West Valley Demonstration Project. Environmental racism is the failure to respond to the needs of the Puerto Rican people, and having such a different response than what happens to places like Florida and Texas. That's what environmental racism is. And I think what's going to happen tomorrow is a walk. I think when they register down at the community center, they're going to bus people to a point, and then they're going to do a walk, kind of a demonstration walk, to retrace what that removal essentially was like. There's a lunch and other things going on, but I think they have a gift bag and T-shirts are giving away. So if you can make it down to Steenburg tomorrow, that's register at the Steenburg Community Center at 9 a.m. tomorrow. It is remember the removal, and I think people should know what that is. And we're coming in. This is the last show of September, so by the time Monday comes around, we're going to be in October. October is being regarded in many places as a month to give some recognition to indigenous peoples. And then, of course, at least during the Obama administration, who knows what's going to happen with Trump, but then November gets regarded as National Native Heritage Month or something like that. I think that's what they call it. And then they turn Black Friday into a special day where you can stop people at Walmart or something like that for Christmas presents. I don't know. Don't ask me what that has to do with honoring Native people, but between Columbus Day being turned into Indigenous Peoples Day in so many places. And, again, I applaud every municipality, every county, every city, every state that has stepped up, townships that have stepped up. Locally, we've got the town of Newstead and Niagara Wheatfield. There's been more and more places that have said, no, we're not gonna honor who and what Christopher Columbus was, and the myth that's been spun about him even for our 5-year-olds to learn about in kindergarten. But we're not going to continue that, and we're no longer going to praise this man for the lie that is being told about him. He didn't discover America, never stepped foot on any territory that the United States claims, including Puerto Rico. Never made it there. But that's all gonna. So a lot of this will enter into the conversation. We'll talk more about this as we go forward. I might do a video this week. I'm probably gonna address some more of this battle with Niagara Falls and the state, especially since Paul Deister submitted his budget for the city this evening. I haven't even got a chance to review it yet, but I suspect, and he made it very clear, he was going to throw gaming revenue in his budget, even though it's not coming. So I may do a video about that, but I think I'm going to prepare a video to address the whole Columbus thing this week as well. So look for that this week. I do have a show in New York, so if you want to tune me in New York, that's on WBAI FM 99.5 in New York City, or you can go to www.wbai.org and you can live stream the show. We also try to stream it with Facebook Live, but we are entering into fund drive mode there, so I'm not sure if we'll stream it or not. But I do encourage you to check out the show. I usually have some pretty good stuff even while we're in fund drive mode. So that's this week, and of course we will be back here on Monday. But there's a lot to cover. There's a lot to look through. There's a lot of things happening politically. There's an effort to possibly impeach, and impeachment doesn't mean remove from office, by the way, but possibly impeach Donald Trump. And I got to tell you, there's some people who believe that the pendulum had to swing this way for a guy like Donald Trump to be in office, and that that somehow this is going to be like a boil that busts and then it gets all better after that. I don't know. We'll see. I think racism has never left the hearts of many American people. It's going to be really on white people to step up and to suppress or eliminate some of this level of acceptability that can go along with white supremacy and white privilege and racism in general. And I think Donald Trump is actually bringing many of these issues to a head, but I don't know that once that balloon pops, I'm not sure what happens after that. But we're all going to have to sit back and watch it through. But I'll tell you, it all comes down to what we all do. This isn't about an election day. It's about how we react and how we participate in social justice and in social our civic responsibilities, not as as Americans or U.S. citizens or but as human beings. So we'll see how that goes. All right. Well, I want to thank you for listening. We'll go out with a little bit of maybe in some manicured images. All right, folks. We'll see you next time.
Has enough time gone by, don't it really seem to fly? All my luck's running.